Hello and welcome back. And in this video, we're going to be learning about previews, and we're going to master previews in SwiftUI. So in SwiftUI, a preview is basically a real-time interactive representation of our UI. And basically this displays what Xcode basically has written, or you have written in the code on the code side, and actually renders right there on the screen. Now SwiftUI previews allows developers to see how their UI looks and behave without running the entire app. Now this feature is particularly beneficial for rapid development and testing. Previews accommodate various devices and modes, including dark and light mode and diverse accessibility settings. By default, SwiftUI, when any SwiftUI view is created from SwiftUI template, the preview functionality is enabled. So if you go in File, New, File, and if you select SwiftUI view template, the preview is going to be automatically enabled for you, and it'll appear. The presence of this preview macro in the file ensures that Canvas activates. Now, if preview is not visible, you can access it by using the editor options and selecting the canvas. Okay, so let me reduce this so you can see it. But if you click on this editor options, then you can select the canvas if the preview is not selected. So let's say if the preview is hidden, we can just go ahead and click on canvas and it'll bring back the preview. Okay, let me go ahead and resize. All right, so this is how you can enable previews for your own screen. Once again, the presence of preview macro is important. Now, before iOS 17, the preview was provided by a struct which would conform to preview provider protocol, but starting iOS 17, the previews are provided using preview macro. Now, it doesn't mean that the previous struct doesn't work. It still does, but macros are a little bit more powerful and more compact. So that's why starting iOS 17, that pattern has been followed. Now, previews offered a range of functionalities. For instance, we can interact with the views with the controls, just like we actually would in the app. Okay, now we have these when you have this pointer selected on your preview setting, that means that right now your view is selectable, and it'll basically show you on the editor side which view is selected. But if you're in the run mode, it actually displays a running version, or a live version of your UI. So if we were to create a button here, and we simply have that button, we can interact with that button. So this is a live preview. Now, if you go back into the interactive mode, you can actually select the button, but you cannot interact with it, meaning you're basically selecting the UI elements in this case. Okay, so this is basically the selectable versus live behaviors. Now, you can play and pause, basically this is what you're doing. You're playing and you're pausing, and this is the dynamic behavior that is provided in the preview. Now, additionally, you have the flexibility to select various options such as color scheme, orientation, dynamic types, allowing you to customize preview basically to assess how your SwiftUI view respond in different visual and accessibility settings. Okay, so let's try out color schemes. So if I go in this section right here and select the color scheme, you're going to notice that we have two color schemes now showing up. You have the light appearance and the dark appearance. Now, this ensures that your UI actually looks good in both appearances. Okay, so this helps you basically develop for your audience, when they're looking either on the dark appearance as a system setting, or light appearance as the system setting, and your views, how do they adapt to the color changes. Okay, now this is one. The other thing that you can do from this is the orientation variant. So if you select the orientation variant, you're going to see how the different orientation would show up for your app. So your app in the portrait mode and your app in landscape left and landscape right mode. Now the third option in this list is basically, let me go ahead and try to click on it. Okay, so the third option is basically the dynamic type variant. Basically, it shows all the dynamic types for the accessibility settings. So how your app would appear for extra small accessibility setting. Essentially, like, when user has set the font, system font for accessibility reasons to extra small to all the way up to AX5. Okay, so how your UI reacts to these, and these become important as you handle more cases for the accessibility, which is extremely important. Now, furthermore, we can modify the simulator type by selecting the list of available simulators, and this offers a convenient way for preview to test out our views in different device configurations. So if we go and just disable this and go back in the live mode, we can choose a different simulator, and we can actually select a simulator that fits maybe our need. So for example, we can select iPhone 15, and our preview basically. So let's see, these are all the options. Let's go ahead and select iPhone 15. There we go. Yeah, the version I selected from there is 17.4. This is more recent, so you can actually, this is like the one that you should select to preview the device. This is basically selecting the run target. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and change it back to iPhone 15 Pro. All right, now this may take a little bit because you're relaunching an instance of the simulator, but it would show up and it would actually show you how your UI looks in this on iPhone 15. Okay, all right, so along with these, I'll let it refresh. Actually, pause the video, let it refresh, and come back when this is ready. All right, so it did refresh, and it looks almost same. It's just like, the screen size is different. Let's go ahead and try out something that is drastically different. So I'm going to try out an iPhone with Touch ID, because it's not going to have the dynamic island. It's going to have the Touch ID at the bottom. So it'll show up right here. All right, so it finally refreshed, and as you can see, this phone looks very different. And this would actually tell you, like, how your UI would look like within an iPhone with the touchscreen. So using this selector, you can actually change your target setting and figure out, like, how your UI will look like. Okay, all right, so now we have, like, explored all the options. We have, like, some other abilities as well. We have the ability to adjust the setting for the current device within the preview. This device that is selected currently, we can actually change some settings. For example, we can change color schemes, orientation, and dynamic type for this particular device, and that control is given to us right here using this button. Okay, now this is basically current canvas device setting, and we can override the color scheme. For example, let's go ahead and turn this on, and our UI for this device is going to turn into dark appearance. So we would know, like, how our UI is going to look like in the dark appearance. Now, along with this, we can actually change the orientation, and we can say, like, this is how it looks in the landscape left, in the portrait, or landscape right form. Okay, other than this, we can also test out the dynamic types basically for the font changes, and we can observe how our UI adapts to the changes as the accessibility setting for the font changes from the system setting. Okay, so as you can see, our UI so far is not breaking, and basically user can still read what's written in the app, or basically what the app is actually doing. Okay, so all these settings are available to you basically for the current device as well. I'm gonna go ahead and turn everything off. Now we can also use multiple previews and multiple by having multiple preview macros with different traits. And let's try it out an example where we're going to generate two previews, one for the dark scheme and another one for the light scheme. And we can control the light scheme, dark and light schemes, and all the things that we have seen here through the code as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to name this light scheme. Okay, and I'm going to copy this and paste it right here. I accidentally closed the preview, but yeah. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say preferred color scheme is dark, and let's go ahead and make this as dark scheme. Okay, so now you can see we have two tabs here. We have light scheme tab, light scheme tab, which actually shows the light scheme for the app, and we have the dark scheme, which actually shows the dark mode. Okay, now these buttons basically are helping us to choose between different options. Now, along with the name, you can also pass custom trait. For example, you can say that I want to actually show the dark scheme in landscape left. So you can say traits, and one of the trait is landscape left, but you have all the other options available as well, where you can actually even fix the layout. So let's go ahead and try first landscape left. Okay, and what's going to happen is this particular UI should basically appear in landscape left, but it should not affect anything on the other tab, which is the light scheme. Okay, now we can actually set up the fixed layout like we just saw, and let's go ahead and try that one out. So we can say we want to have fixed layout and a view of 200 by 200 to see how would our UI look like in this 200 by 200 space. Okay, now if you notice that nothing changes in the live view, the reason is because we are still in the app interaction mode. Okay, and in that case the fixed layout is not going to be effective, so you'd have to switch into the static mode. And as you can see now, this is how our view is going to look like basically when it's contained in 200 by 200 box. So we can see there are some breaking changes. For example, devtechie.com is now broken apart into two lines. We don't want to do that, so that means we need to increase the width of this box to be 300, so it actually takes over a little bit more space in the width, and we can display the devtechie.com in a single line. Okay, now let's go back and resume the way we are interacting, and this is how you can actually see how your UI, especially if you're designing controls or custom components and stuff like that, how it would look like basically within your views. Now, previews are powerful macros, and they help you build an accurate app UI using the power of without you having to run your app over and over, and using the power of live rendering. Okay, so you're actually rendering all the UI and the changes right here in the code and seeing them in the real time on the right hand side, and it's not going to be any different when you run this inside the simulator or on your device. All right, so I hope you learned a bit or two about previews and how to use them effectively within your app and your app development. With that, we have reached the end of this video, And thanks again for watching. I will see you guys in another video. Thank you.